Some places are simply left behind. Others are warned against. There is a difference between a building that is empty and a building that people were told, specifically, never to enter alone. Tonight, 3 of them. A sanatorium where the sick were moved through tunnels so the healthy wouldn't see the dead. A farmhouse where a family was killed in their sleep, in a case that was never solved. And a fort in India so old, and so specifically feared, that a government agency made it illegal to enter after dark. These are documented accounts. Investigated. Recorded. Never fully explained. Story number 1. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Louisville, Kentucky, 1910. Waverly Hills opened in 1910 to treat tuberculosis, at a time when the disease was killing more Americans than almost any other cause of death. There was no cure. Only rest, fresh air, and time. Patients stayed for months. Some stayed for years. Many never left at all. By the 1950s, so many patients were dying that the hospital built a tunnel, nearly 500 feet long, sloped downward, connecting the main building to the road below. It had a practical purpose. Staff used it to move supplies without patients seeing. And it was used, more than anything, to move bodies away from the building without the other patients watching them go. Locals began calling it the body chute. The name stayed. The hospital closed in 1961. It sat empty, then became briefly a geriatric care center, then was abandoned entirely by the early 1980s. Vandals moved in. Then explorers. Then, eventually, paranormal investigators, drawn by a building with a documented death toll that some estimates place in the tens of thousands. The accounts collected from those who have worked overnight restoration and security shifts in the building are consistent in one specific way. Nearly all of them mention room 502. A nurse is reported to have taken her own life in that room in 1928, though hospital records from the period are incomplete, and the exact circumstances have never been confirmed. What is documented is this: multiple independent security contractors, hired decades apart, with no contact with one another, have reported the same experience in that room. A sensation of being watched from the corner near the window. A temperature drop isolated to that one room, while adjoining rooms remain at ambient temperature. And on several recorded occasions, exterior surveillance cameras capturing movement in the windows of room 502 while the interior motion sensors registered nothing. The body chute itself is the second consistent account. Contractors hired to clear debris from the tunnel in the early 2000s reported hearing what they described as multiple people talking, muffled, as if through a wall, in a tunnel with no rooms branching off it, no other structure nearby, and no source identified after inspection. One contractor described it simply: the sound of a hallway full of people who are not visible. Waverly Hills is now a licensed tourist attraction. Tens of thousands of visitors walk the body chute every year. Staff will tell you, if you ask, that most visitors report nothing at all. And that a small number report exactly what the contractors did, years before the tours ever began. Story number 2. The Villisca Axe Murder House, Villisca, Iowa, 1912. On the night of June 9, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, 8 people were killed in their sleep. Josiah and Sarah Moore. Their 4 children. And 2 young guests staying the night. All 8 were killed with an axe belonging to the household itself. The murders were discovered the next morning when a neighbor, concerned that the family hadn't emerged, let herself in. The axe was found in an upstairs bedroom, leaning against a wall, wiped down. The killer had covered the mirrors in the house with clothing. Investigators never determined why. The case became one of the most investigated unsolved murders in American history. Multiple suspects were named over the following decades. A senator was investigated. A traveling minister was tried twice and acquitted both times. No one was ever convicted. The house was sold, resold, and eventually abandoned, before being purchased in the 1990s and restored to its 1912 condition, specifically so it could be opened to the public exactly as it was the night of the murders. There is no electricity in the house today. Visitors are given lanterns. The accounts collected from investigators and overnight visitors center on two consistent details. The first is sound. Multiple recording devices, left overnight by paranormal researchers with no one present in the house, have captured what investigators describe as a child's voice, in the children's bedroom, on separate occasions, years apart, using different equipment, from different teams. The recordings have been reviewed by multiple independent researchers. None have identified a source. The second is the mirrors. Even in the restored house today, with no clothing over the glass, multiple visitors have reported specifically avoiding the mirrors, describing a feeling of being looked at from inside the glass itself, before they had been told that the mirrors were covered the night of the murders. The house's caretakers do not tell visitors this detail until after their stay. Every year, without prompting, a portion of visitors mention the mirrors unprompted. The case remains open in the state of Iowa to this day. No one has ever been charged. The house still stands exactly as it did that night. Story number 3. Bhangarh Fort, Rajasthan, India, 1573 to present. Bhangarh Fort was built in 1573 in the Waverly hills of Rajasthan, India. It was once a thriving city of nearly 10,000 people. By the early 19th century, it was empty. Local accounts describe the abandonment as sudden and connected to a curse. Versions of the story vary, involving a local holy man, a princess, and a black magic practitioner who fell in love with her. Whatever the origin, the fort has remained empty since. Today it is managed by the Archaeological Survey of India, a government body responsible for the country's historic sites. Bhangarh is the only monument in India with an official sign, posted by that government body, explicitly prohibiting visitors from entering before sunrise or after sunset. This is not folklore. It is written policy, enforced by guards stationed at the site. The accounts collected from those guards, who work in shifts and are required to leave the interior before dusk each day, describe the same experience repeated across decades of postings. A sound from within the ruined palace at the center of the complex, described consistently as multiple voices, talking at a normal conversational volume, in a building with no roof, no doors, and no occupants. Several guards, in accounts recorded independently, describe walking toward the sound to investigate, and the sound moving, always remaining just out of the room they entered, audible from the next room over, every time. Local residents in the nearby village will not enter the fort after dark under any circumstance, regardless of payment or persuasion, a policy that predates the Archaeological Survey's own restriction by generations. Visitors during permitted daylight hours report the site as simply beautiful. Quiet. Undisturbed. It is only in the hour before sunset, as guards begin ushering the last visitors toward the gates, that many describe a shift, a sense, they say, of being asked to leave rather than simply told. A sanatorium tunnel built to hide the dead from the living. A farmhouse where the mirrors were covered, and no one has ever said why. A fort so feared that a government wrote the fear into law. 3 places. 3 centuries. 3 continents. None of them explained. All of them still standing. If you have visited a place like this, or worked in one, I want to hear about it. For new stories, subscribe my channel Hollow Veins. Some places are only empty in the daylight.